Bloody hell.
Clear prop.
When the green airspeed is increasing.
81023.
Today I'll show you the danger of using one of these in your aircraft cockpit. It's a dry powder fire extinguisher, and if you carry one in your aircraft, you need to know the risks that it poses.
I'm looking into this issue today because a little while back I reported on a mid-air emergency in a Cessna over Essex in England. Newly qualified private pilot Zach had an electrical fire in flight which caused smoke in the cockpit. Zach shut down his electrics and made a safe emergency landing at Southend. But following the incident, he questioned whether he should have used his fire extinguisher.
Part 21 certified aircraft like my PA28 here are legally required in the UK to have a fire extinguisher on board, but the relevant regulations don't specify the type, only that it has to be suitable for the type of fire that you might encounter. Also, it should minimise the sort of toxic gas concentrations that people in the cockpit might encounter. But when would you use one?
Before flight, we're supposed to brief our passengers on the location of the extinguisher, but I've not seen any official guidance on when they should be used. The topic didn't come up during my flight training, and generally speaking, the aircraft manuals don't appear to offer many clues either.
So, we're going to get to the bottom of all of this today. When should we use a fire extinguisher in the cockpit? We're going to find out what happens when you set one off in flight, and we're going to learn some techniques for putting out a raging fuel fire. So come to the fire training ground here at Slate, where we found the wreck of, I think, what might be a Katana, I'm not entirely sure. And I'm with Marvin Smith, who's a retired West Sussex County Council firefighter. You were on the National Fire Chiefs Council for Air Transportation. You train the fire crews here. You're also a private pilot. So I think there's a lot of ambiguity about this.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, John. It's one of those things that, in your basic training, you get shown, we would carry out a checklist and we'd look at where the extinguisher is, but not necessarily be shown how to use it.
And we're not told, are we, what the risks are of using it as well. And as we're about to find out, some of these are more risky than others. In fact, they all carry a risk.
The various POH will give you some different guidance. Some don't even mention them, some say use them, but none of them will indicate to you the risks and hazards associated with operating them within a confined space.
Now, there are three main types of fire extinguisher that we're finding in the cockpit at the moment. Let's have a look at what they are and how they work and what effect they would have if they were discharged in the cockpit.
Okay, so the first one that we're looking at here is Halon or BCF, which is the common type used in aircraft and still within the CAA guidance. It basically uses a chemical reaction to put the fire out.
Very effective.
Very effective, very clean agent. Probably, if you spoke to an engineer, the best one to be used in the aircraft. However, the problem with it is it will, in a confined space, create the issue of taking away the oxygen and the breathability within the cockpit.
So if you set that off in the cockpit, is it possible that you could become incapacitated?
Yeah, there is that possibility.
If you set it off, you'd have to open the vents and get some fresh air in.
And again, that would depend on aircraft to aircraft on how much venting capacity you've got as well.
And this is about to be banned.
So currently in the UK, you can't use this type of extinguisher outside of aviation or other identified areas. But as of 2025, as you say, we believe that this type of extinguisher won't be able to use within general aviation.
I know there are some alternatives that have been created, but the second one on our list here is carbon dioxide, and that might probably be one of the things that the CAA says that we're to use. It's 3 times the size of Halon in terms of its capacity there, for the same amount of firefighting capacity.
Yes, so basically it's a carbon dioxide extinguisher. It's liquid carbon dioxide within the extinguisher. When you squeeze the handle, you'll get carbon dioxide gas come out from the horn. And again, it will limit the oxygen within the compartment because that's what it's designed to do, to put the fire out. It takes the oxygen away from the fire.
And the third one on our list I think my engineers are certainly starting to find these fitted in cockpits, which they don't recommend. It's dry powder. So how does dry powder work in putting out a fire?
So dry powder is exactly what it says. It's a powder within a propellant. You will squeeze the handle, and it again forms a chemical reaction with the fire and puts it out. But in doing so, it creates a large cloud of dust. Better off used externally, certainly not recommended for inside compartments. Ultimately, the powder that comes out of here is not going to be good for the aircraft or good for you or people within the aircraft.
I'm going to demonstrate setting off one of these dry powder extinguishers in a minute, and you'll see why that would be a very bad idea in an enclosed cabin in flight. First though, I want you to take a look at this. We're at Sleep today filming this piece, and this is an acrylic artistic representation of Sleep's runways and taxiways. I recently met up with Steve Blundell, who has set up Peritracks. It's a business selling these novel pieces of art. You can request a Peritrack of any airfield in the world, more or less, and they're a great way of displaying your home airfield or maybe your favourite airfields. They can either be easily mounted on the wall directly, or they can come framed, a perfect novelty or gift for an AvGeek. I interviewed Steve about his creations. You can watch that interview now. The link is on the screen or in the video description. And if you're interested in getting a Peritrack for yourself, visit their website. We're going to show you now why you should never set off a dry powder fire extinguisher in an enclosed cockpit. I'm kitting myself up in a protective suit, goggles, gloves and face mask because this is going to get messy.
I've got the fire extinguisher here. I'm settled in the cruise. Are we ready to go, Marvin?
Yep, on you, John.
So pull the pin first, yeah?
Yes, pull the pin.
Right.
Pull the way out, pull the pin all the way out.
Got it. And then point at the instruments.
Point at the instruments and fire.
Oh, bloody hell.
It's exactly as I expected. Basically, the cockpit is now filling up the dry powder, so your vision's going to be impaired. It'll be going down your throat. You'll find it uncomfortable to breathe.
So I'm getting some in the... Oh, bloody hell. Ugh. But look at that.
Yep.
We've got the window open.
Yep, and it's still hanging in the air.
I mean, I couldn't see anything.
It's wrecked the airplane, but not only that, John, you wouldn't be able to fly it in that condition.
No.
And ultimately, you'd be looking now to try and carry out a forced landing because you can't guarantee the fire's gone out.
And we won't be able to see where we're going.
No, not at all.
The composition of the powder is harmful to the skin. If I didn't have goggles on, it would likely irritate my eyes, and without the mask, breathing would probably be pretty difficult too. The powder is not only harmful to me, it would wreck the aircraft. It's corrosive and particularly damaging to the aircraft electrics. Having seen this now, I do wonder why anyone would have a dry powder extinguisher in their aircraft.
I mean, having seen that, Marvin, I don't think I'd ever use a dry powder extinguisher in my cockpit, and I reckon anyone that's got one in their cockpit needs to know that that's what would happen. But would there be any circumstances, given that all the extinguishers carry a risk, that you'd use one in flight in a cockpit?
If it was down to me, John, I'd probably follow the POH all the way through to that point of where it says use an extinguisher if fitted. And at that point, I'd be looking to carry out my forced landing. And if I was still not quite there, and maybe flames were getting bigger or the smoke was filling the cockpit, then I would use it, but only in short blasts, just to try to knock the fire back or the flames back, and then ventilate a little bit and then use a little bit more as required.
I think we've done a service to the community today in talking about this and highlighting this. Do you think there should be more in the pilot training syllabus, more guidance from the regulator on this?
It's a difficult one ultimately, because you are in a confined space, and what is the guidance going to offer you other than you've got an extinguisher and use it as safely as possible? I don't think there's a lot more we can do. I think the advice we're giving today is not to use the dry powder extinguisher, clearly, but beyond that, the other two will have a risk, but it's where that risk benefit comes out and may benefit you slightly in landing the aircraft.
Now, I approached the UK CAA nearly 4 months ago to tell them that I was making this film, and I asked them if they'd be prepared to participate. I've chased them quite a lot since and asked them for their position on the use of dry powder extinguishers in light aircraft. I also asked them if they think there should be more guidance on how pilots of small aircraft should deal with cockpit fires and when and how to use an extinguisher in the cabin. And I asked them what they recommend we should all do when halon is banned at the end of December next year. They didn't answer my questions, they didn't provide any information or offer anyone for interview. I spoke to AOPA UK about this whole issue, and they say they've got a meeting scheduled with the CAA next week and they're going to bring it up with them then and ask them what's being done to help general aviation transition to halon replacement extinguishers when the ban comes into effect next year. As you probably know, AOPA UK quietly works hard behind the scenes tackling the issues that matter to us like this one, and they do their best to secure our freedom to fly. Flying Reporter followers can get an AOPA UK membership now with a 25% discount. Just use my special link that's on the screen or in the video description. So, as we've demonstrated, dry powder extinguishers could cause us real problems if they're discharged in the cockpit in flight. But they are extremely effective with the kind of fires we might face around the aeroplane on the ground.
So I'm dressed up like Fireman Sam now. Because we're going to do a live demo here with real fire. What kinds of fires are common at airfields around GA?
So the sort of thing you'll find, John, will be around maybe the refuelling area, maybe around the maintenance area, maybe around an aircraft itself with maybe the engine alight, something like that.
And all of the extinguishers that we've looked at today would be good at dealing with most of those fires?
So externally, the dry powder for a running fuel fire or a fuel fire. For an engine itself, to cause the least damage to it, if it's just under the cowling in the engine, then pushing a CO2 into it, a carbon dioxide into it would be really good.
Well, do you want to show us how to put out a fire, maybe a fuel fire on the ground or something?
Okay, cool.
Marvin is lighting a small avgas fire, something that could be typical on a small GA airfield. He's going to show us the proper technique for operating a dry powder fire extinguisher to safely put it out.
So I'm going to take the extinguisher, John, take the pin out. I'm going to test it over to the right here, and then I'm going to attack the fire in this method here.
And out it goes, just like that. That is very effective, very effective. Right, my go then. So pull the pin.
So pull the pin, take the plastic wrapper off, the plastic pieces off. Pull the pin,
lift it up, point it to the right, test it.
Yep, and then keep it moving.
That took a bit longer to go out, that one. Yeah, probably my technique wasn't as good as yours. That does fill you with confidence though, because it's
very effective.
It does go out. You'd think you'd be having to fight and fight and fight, but it's very quick.
What you've got to watch with a fuel fire on the ground is it doesn't come back round behind you. Because it can, if you've not put it out, you noticed as you started to go towards it,
came back
into this corner. If you've got a running fuel fire on the ground, you're looking at either dry powder or foam in preference. The carbon dioxide extinguisher, good for that cowled engine into the engine compartment itself.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Marvin.
Thank you.
Thanks for teaching me a bit of firefighting.
So I hope you've learnt something here about fire extinguishers and the risks associated with using them in the cockpit. And if you have a dry powder extinguisher in your aircraft, I hope this demonstration has convinced you to find an alternative. Please share the video with your flying community and friends to spread the message. But I shall leave you there. Thanks for watching, and as always, fly safely, my friends.